As everyone knows, today I'm going to be talking about cycling, but not only that, kind of a little bit more of a physio perspective, but keeping it super simple just so that everyone can kind of understand and be on the same page. So this is very much an introduction to the connection between physio and cycling and how it can benefit you in that way. So as Matt introduced, my name is Mackenzie. I am a resident physiotherapist at Foundation. I finished my Bachelor of Arts in Health Studies at Queen's University in 2017. And I know there's some Queen's kiddos on here today too. And then I did my Master's of Science in Physiotherapy at McMaster, and I finished that in 2020. So hopefully there's some Mac grads out there too. In terms of cycling, I ride a hybrid bike, which is it's that picture on the right there. I'm unclipped, which means that my pedals are flat, and I wear running shoes on top of those, and I have straight handlebars as opposed to the drop bars that you would see on a road bike. The only thing is that contrary to a mountain bike is that my wheels are a little bit thinner, but they still allow for some traction on the terrain. I started biking when I was really young. That's actually a picture of me right there on a tricycle. You got to start somewhere. But I started when I was younger, and we would do lots of trips to Lakefield from Peterborough. My sister will remember that. We used to go and get ice cream. And then I kind of graduated from that, and ultimately I had a brief stint as a beginner mountain biking instructor for little kids, which was really fun and definitely a learning experience for myself as well. Nowadays, I'm definitely more of a commuter. I go to and from work on my bike, and I love to do trails. So that's what my bike is really good for as well, is different terrain. So I like the Hamilton Brantford Rail Trail, the Rotary Greenway Trail in Peterborough as well. And then when COVID-19 happened, I purchased a bike trainer, and I transformed my outdoor bike into an indoor spin cycle, which I know a lot of individuals have been doing as well, because I've been getting a lot of questions on how I was able to transform my bike into an indoor bike. So with this platform, I was able to participate in classes virtually from Peloton, and I also did a couple with Pedal Toronto. And then I also now am going outdoors for active TO, some waterfront trail, and things like that. So my current cycling goals, I mentioned I go to and from work every day. I'm trying to increase my speed. So that's kind of where I'm at. I want to go from 28 minutes. I want to go a little bit faster than 28 minutes when I'm going to work, because it's mostly downhill. And then I'm at 34 minutes now for going from, so I'm trying to increase my speed that way. And I'll talk a little bit more about how I plan on doing that. But just, it's important to know that I too have goals that I'm trying to reach with cycling. And then my long-term goal, the one I'm really looking forward to doing someday, is riding the Legacy Trail from Canmore to Banff in Alberta. So that's a little bit about me and my passion for cycling and kind of where I want to go with it. We'll move on, and we'll talk a little bit. Yeah.
Mackenzie, before you move on, I think everybody wants to know, do you still have the jean bucket hat?
Oh, I wish. I mean, my head was probably around the same size. Got a big head, so maybe. That would be great, though. I should bring that back. Okay, so I'm going to continue. Is that okay, Matt? Any more?
Yeah, no, I'm just looking at some comments. A lot of people from the Kawarthas, Andre. Same type of setup as you have, so it's nice to hear, but you're good to go.
That's perfect. And some people that did the Legacy Trail. Okay, so What is cycling? We'll just talk about the basics. It is a healthy, low impact and adaptable exercise that can be enjoyed at any age. So by low impact, basically that means that you are putting as much stress on the joints and the joints and the ligaments and the tendons. For instance, in running, that would be considered a high impact sport. So with biking, you really take off the load of your body there. And so why is it becoming more popular? This is, I read on Gear's website the other day that there is a bike shortage, and that is because cycling, riding your bike is just becoming so popular. And I've noticed this within my client base as well, is that not everyone, sorry, but a lot of individuals are saying that they're starting to ride their bike more. And so the big reason for this is that gyms and spin studios are unfortunately closed due to COVID-19 restrictions. And so individuals are trying to find new ways to get active and really engage in some sort of physical activity. There's a ton of benefits towards this. I'm thrilled that so many people are getting into cycling. However, there do come some increased risk of injury and things like that when you are starting something new and don't know that much about it yet. The other reasons that it's always been popular is it's time efficient. So you're able to combine commuting or going to get groceries and things like that with physical activity, which is excellent. It's a great form of doing that. And then, as I said, it's low impact, so it's good on the joints. It's good for anyone that might have some sort of joint pain or arthritis or something like that. It kind of takes away from that joint load. So it's really beneficial in that sense. It's easy to learn. It's easy to progress. It can be as intense as you want it to be. And then there's so many different styles of training to meet the needs of each specific goal. For instance, if you want to go faster, you typically would take like a road bike or something like that, those thinner wheels, lighter bike, things like that. And then there's mountain biking. You're going to want something with shocks or absorbers or something with a little bit of a wider wheel for those difficult terrains. So in terms of health benefits, this is where they're so vast. There's so many. So health benefits: increased cardiovascular fitness, increase your muscle strength and flexibility, increased joint mobility, improved posture and coordination, improved weight control, so decreased fat, decreased stress levels, anxiety, and depression, which I think is so relevant nowadays, especially just because we've been going through quite the year, and any way that you can kind of get out and do something that you enjoy, I think, is really important. Prevention and management of disease. So there's actually a lot of research out there that says that doing cycling or aerobic activity can reduce type 2 diabetes, heart attack and stroke, some cancers, mental illness, and arthritis. So getting involved in something like this for regular activity is a great way to protect your health in that sense and decrease your risk of these diseases. And then in terms of physio, it actually is a really good thing to start incorporating into your treatment plan and things like that, or your rehabilitation plan, because it actually helps with lower extremity joints like the hips, knees, and ankles, because it enhances and helps to control lower body movements. So even if your goal isn't to get back to cycling, it's a really good thing to start incorporating into your activity. For instance, if you do want to offload a certain joint and things like that. So I've got a little slide here. It has a lot of information, but basically I kind of narrowed down the types of cycling based on a lot of what my clients tell me, as well as just the most common types of cycling that are out there. So we've got the road/urban cyclist, which is more of a road bike, a little bit more of those narrow wheels. Can be a dropped or curve or straight handlebar. And it can be clipped in or not. So it could be flat pedals as well. We've got the spinner, which is more of a stationary bike, or for instance, like I was doing, an outdoor bike on a trainer. This means that there's varying handlebar types. You can be clipped in or you don't have to be. And you're riding in and out of the saddle, which means up and down off the seat. And there might even be some choreography in there. Then we've got the mountain biker. Like I said, it's got those wider tires, straight handlebars usually. You can be clipped in or clipped out. And then this is where the terrain, it's no longer flat. It is off-roading. It can be steep. It can be rough terrain. And then we've also got the recreational cyclist. So I see this a lot on my commute, and it's great. You've got that the Bike Share Toronto. And typically these individuals are riding with a little bit of a lower seat and higher handlebars. They're not clipped in, and the terrain is like road pavement, and we can't forget about the streetcar rails. Those are crazy. So you typically see that, and they're usually in the saddle. So I'm curious to know, based on these kind of broad categories, what type of riding, if you can put it in the chat, what type of riding have you been doing? It might be more than one even, but over the last little bit, what type of riding have you guys been doing? So a lot of road, urban. I like this, what my sister put in here. I'm not biased, but what my sister put in here kind of combines the physio aspect of things. She started riding her bike 2 years ago when she tore her quad tendon, and it helped to cope with her inability to run. So like I said, an intro to rehabilitation for those lower extremities can be cycling, which is excellent to keep up that cardio fitness. Recreational, not many mountain bikers, but I guess we don't have very many mountains, or none. We have none. Okay, and lots of indoor trainer as well. That's great. Okay. And then I'm curious as well. Yeah, we're not in BC or Alberta, that's true. I'm curious as well, how many people started biking during, or getting it more into biking during the pandemic? Just put yes, or just put yes. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of yeses. Oh yes, and some biking going down because they used to commute. That is huge too. Okay. Well, it's sad to see the decrease in biking, but it's nice to see how many people have actually grown with their bike experience as well over the last little bit. Yeah, that's excellent. So then I likely will have some good responses when we start talking about injuries and stuff. Okay. So moving on here. So let's talk about the biomechanics of cycling. And we're going to go really basic on this for this presentation, just to really touch on, I don't want to overwhelm. And biomechanics can also change with the type of ride. So I want to keep it basic just because we do have a vast, there's so many different types of cycling as well. So when we talk about biomechanics, we're talking about the pedal stroke. And there's many different descriptions of the pedal stroke in the research, but they all kind of describe the same 4 phases. So I've grouped them together, even though there's different wording for different things. I've kind of combined them into this one photo, as well as these 4 broad categories. So this photo has someone that's clipped in, for instance, but it's the same type of the same pedal stroke as someone that wouldn't be, but I'll explain differences in a second as well. So number one, we have that setup. So that's at the very top there, between kind of 11 and 12 o'clock. Then we have the downstroke, and then this is where the kind of the pedal actually begins. You have the downstroke. People also call it the power stroke. They also call it the push phase. So that's where the wording is different, but they all kind of mean the same thing. And that goes from about 1 o'clock to around 4 or 5 o'clock. And then you have the pullback. The pullback is from around 5 to 7. And then you have the upstroke. So the upstroke, the pull phase, or the recovery phase. And I'll talk to you a little bit about why those have some differing meanings. And I'll talk to you about that on the next phase. So when we get into anatomy, this is where we kind of start to see some of those differences. But I'll check and see if there's any questions about biomechanics. Super basic. Basically, we just look at the pedal in this sense. Okay. So cycling anatomy. Huge misconception is that people think that it's just their legs that's working. So this is something that I kind of like to explain to some of my clients that aren't sure if they want to get into cycling, or if they want to try something new. They often think it's just their legs, but it's not. So it's actually a whole body workout. So I'll show you how in a second. So the primary muscles, yes, it's the legs, it's the lower extremities. And these are the muscles that you use during that pedal stroke, that brief chat that we had about biomechanics. So it is the glute max, which is that red, it's highlighted in red there. We have the hamstrings. So we've got a group of the hamstrings. We've got the group of the quadricep muscles. We've also got the calves, which is made up of 2 muscles. And then we have the tibialis anterior, which is just the muscle that's that makes up kind of that shin area on the front. And I say the group of the hamstrings and the group of the quadriceps because there are separate muscles within those. And it's how those muscles are used that we can start to see imbalances between an injury with some of these things. So now connecting both the pedal stroke with the muscles that are used, which are our primary muscles that we use. So we use the quads, and the quads do most of the work when they're at the top of the stroke and they're going through the downstroke and the power phase. And then the glutes and the calves start to kick in. When they're near the bottom, they're about to kind of begin that pullback. And so this picture does a really good job of highlighting in color. So whatever color correlates with around the wheel is, around the pedal stroke is where it starts to kick in, which I really like this. It's adapted from a paper that was actually published a while ago, but they had adapted this photo from it, which I think is really, really neat. And then the thickness of the wheel, or of the color, you can't see what I'm pointing at. The thickness of the color, I don't know if you can see my mouse. Can you see my mouse?
Yeah, we can see your mouse.
Okay, thank you. I'm like pointing at it here and nothing's happening. Okay, so the thickness here is basically the relative power that's used from those muscles. So you can see a really thick blue line here. That's because the quad is using a lot of power here. And then you start to see the glute kind of kicks in near that stroke as well. And then the calves will start to kick in like I mentioned, just at the bottom there with the beginning of that pullback. Now the hip flexors start to come in at the pullback, but really they're working hard through that upstroke phase and that recovery phase. Kind of up here. So we've got the hamstrings as well, which I meant to put right there in that thing. Now I'm going mouse crazy here. Anyway, so hamstring is the orange. And then when we get up here, we have the hip flexor that really helps to bring us back up into the upstroke and recovery phase. So this is where I said it depends on the type of pedal that you use for how much certain muscles are contributing. So for instance, me not being clipped in means that I'm going to have a lot more focus on the downstroke and the power phase to bring my other leg back around. I'm going to try and demonstrate this as best I can. Maybe it's better if I just explain the clipped in version. So the clipped in version is going to emphasize the hip flexors much more because they are able to pull the pedal back up and around. So right here, because it's attached, whereas my foot is not attached, which means that my opposite leg needs to then be a little bit have a little bit more power in the downstroke to actually get around again. So my ride is very much push, 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 whereas someone else's ride, where if they're clipped in, might be push, pull, that type of a thing. That's a super basic way to think about it. But basically that means that there's going to be differences in the way that my hip flexors, in the tightness and the strength of my hip flexors compared to the tightness and the strength of someone that is clipped in. Does that make sense? I hope so. Okay, makes sense. Okay, I'm glad. Yeah, so you just have some differences, and that's just one thing to think about. There's so many, if you get into the nitty gritty of it all, like I said, those imbalances, like the quads is a group of muscles, the hamstrings are a group of muscles. And so if I begin to really separate like into those groups, there might be imbalances between outer and inner quads, or outer and inner hamstrings and things like that. So there's a lot of things you kind of have to tease through, and it all depends on how that individual is riding and how their bike is fitting according to their needs. So like I said, it's the whole body. So you've got secondary muscles, and for the most part, from what I was reading and what I've seen in my own clients and even in myself, is that the secondary muscles are mainly to maintain your posture, your stability, and your balance on the bike. Now again, if you're a mountain biker, you're going to be using different muscles more than someone that is on flat road the whole time, and I'll explain this a little bit. So for our core muscles, so those are abdominal muscles, we've got our obliques in there. This is particularly when you're riding uphill, you're pulling up on the handlebars, and you also have to kind of maintain that stability. Especially if you come out of the saddle, you might even be rocking side to side a little bit, and so you're using those abdominals to really keep you stabilized. Then you also have the upper, middle, and lower back muscles. And as you can imagine, those are always being used because you're in a bent forward position, and you need to be able to have that stability to not just fall forward. You need to be able to keep that posture. And that changes whether or not you're doing like an endurance ride, if you're doing a race ride. Race rides tend to have their seat a little bit higher and their handlebars a little bit lower, which is why I say that, because then that causes much more of a hunched over position. Mountain bikers are a little bit more seated up, and things like that. Recreational riders are definitely a little bit more seated up if you're thinking about those bike share bicycles. And then the hip abductors and adductors. So the adductors are the ones that are on the inside of your thighs, and they actually are constantly contracting just to keep you on the seat. They're this group of muscles right here. So they bring your legs in to keep your body on the seat. And then there's also the abductors, which are kind of, well, this isn't the best picture for it, but we've got a muscle in there. And basically those are to stabilize. So those are also contracting at the same time to help stabilize you on the seat when you have differences in terrain. And then you've got the neck as well, because you are in a hunched over position, but you also have to look forward. And so you've got those neck extensors really working as you ride. And then you also have your shoulder, arm, and hand muscles working. So that's like forearm, your arm muscles, your shoulder. Those are all working as well. And in particular, those are working when you are going uphill. and things like that. And then the other thing I want to say as well is core is also really important for those of you that are doing that are commuting, because you have to be able to signal, you have to kind of be able to maintain your balance while doing one hand. So that's like a whole other challenge as well. And so you need that core stability to feel confident while doing that as well. Check here. Oh, the I'm late to work ride. Yeah, that takes a whole different, that's a cardio workout. Okay. So there's a question about piriformis syndrome, but I think we'll save that for the end, or near the end. Okay. So common injuries, perfect segue. Okay. So what we have, there's two different broad types of injuries. So we have acute injuries, and this happens when you fall off your bike. Or a bicycle crash, for instance. Now, these are rather rare, however, they do happen, whether or not it is with another cyclist. Like I said, the streetcar rails are pretty unforgiving, or in kind of worst case scenario, a vehicle. So, although they're rare, they can cause a range of injuries from minor to permanent disability and even death. So these types of things include head injury, like concussion, neck injury, like whiplash from falling, and facial injuries like bruises and sometimes fractures. Other injuries include ligament sprains. For instance, if you're falling and you're landing on kind of that a straight arm, you might injure ligaments in your shoulder. You also might injure some nerves if you fall in a certain way. Muscle strains and tears, bruises and scrapes. And I added this one in today because I wasn't wearing enough sunscreen. So sunburns, you got to wear sunscreen too. So I count that as an acute injury. Prevention of acute injuries. Wear a helmet. I can't stress this enough. I don't care if you don't look cool, just wear a helmet. It's going to help to prevent concussion and those more severe head injuries even if it's a rare case of it happening, of a crash or something like that. It's really important that you wear one. Getting a regular bicycle tune-up can help identify any types of any issues that might be happening with the bike. I know it's kind of tough to get in right now, but it is beneficial. You want to obey road rules. You want to use hand signals, and you want to use a bell. Well, it's the law. You do have to use a working bell, but use it. Don't just have it. And before I even check the chat, because I feel like one of my clients that I know is on here is going to say just YouTube videos for bike tune-ups. If you're good enough at that, then YouTube something for a tune-up, because that will be a skill you will use forever. So you should definitely, there's lots of YouTube videos there too. You want to wear bright colored clothing, and then also have front and rear lights. This helps to make drivers aware that you are on the road. And then you also want to do warm-ups, stretches, and cooldowns. This is for things like potentially a muscle strain or tear or something like that, just from like an overexertion right away, or even just falling and your body's not prepared to take that force. You want to stay hydrated, and then you want to wear sunscreen in terms of that burn. Okay. And now chronic or overuse injuries. So these are the ones we see more commonly. And these are from tissue damage. These essentially are tissue damage because of repetitive stress. And so we see this a lot in clients that are running or cycling, because it basically is the same motion over and over again. And we are able to do it for long periods of time at a time, as well as because COVID-19 is happening and there's a lot of restrictions, some people are actually starting to do this as their primary activity, whereas before they might not have. So some individuals are riding every single day now, or just at a way higher rate than they used to. And so overuse injuries can happen because either just using that same repetitive movement over and over again, even if you have like a perfect bike fit. But they also happen if there's something off or something is not specific to your what your body needs in terms of a bicycle fit, then that tissue damage can happen because you are repeatedly using that same pattern of movement. For instance, if your knees or your kneecap is always tracking in a certain way or moving in a certain way that's not desirable, over time that is going to start to wear down and create a painful situation. So I've kind of developed, or I've gathered some information here. The most common areas for bicycle injuries are the neck, the knee, the groin or buttocks, the hands, and the low back. And so, like I said, riding a bike is whole body. It's not just legs. And that unfortunately means that injuries are also going to be whole body. And we'll talk about a little bit about how to prevent those. But first, I want to know how many people have experienced any of these, and if so, what, because of cycling, if you know what it is. So, or if you just know it was knee pain, just write knee, something like that. Let's see. Pretty much all of them, yeah. Also, I'm very down for a foundation 40K. That sounds like a great idea. Okay, neck and shoulder pain, yeah. And someone brings up a really good point. Ingrid brings up a really good point. Not sure if neck is related to bike or computer use. And just to touch on that a little bit, biking is a sitting sport. And so you are in that forward bending position. So now with work from home and things like that, individuals, if you are using cycling as your form of exercise, your primary form of exercise, you might also be seeing that neck pain a little bit more frequently than an individual that does a little bit more than just cycling or things like that. So they unfortunately go hand in hand, but they both are sitting activities. But there are ways that you can kind of combat that, and we'll talk about that. Okay, yeah, glutes. Lots of things. Oh yeah, low back, and doesn't help with a backpack on, that's for sure too. And backpack can actually cause a lot of different things like nerve pain as well, just because of compression and stuff like that. So if you're getting numb hands or fingers, that could also be attributed to your backpack. So there's a lot of external factors that actually come into play when we think about injuries with cycling, which is important as well. And then in terms of the sit bone pain, that's definitely one. It might indicate that you need a different seat. It might indicate that your seat needs to be adjusted, or if you haven't tried it, padded bike shorts are the best thing that's ever happened to me. So those, if you don't have them, go get them. This is not sponsored, I wish. Okay, so prevention of chronic injuries. So cardio warm-up is important. We'll dive deeper into cardio, stretching, and cool down. But if you do not stretch, you're gonna start now. So yeah, like I said, cool down as well. Then you also want to have strengthening exercises for primary and secondary muscle groups, just to kind of complement what you're doing already, and that'll help with efficiency a little bit as well. Then rolling out with a foam roller is a really, really good idea. Just kind of gives you that benefit of a massage. And then also physiotherapy, massage therapy, and chiropractic therapy are just some of the different types of professional advice that you can go and seek out. Now more than ever, it's becoming a little bit more popular that individuals are seeking out physiotherapy advice before injury, which is really great. Just because, like I said, if you're not stretching, you should start. That's just one of the types of things that I've noticed in clients that are starting to complain of either knee pain or something like that. That's the trend, that stretching is not happening. So these types of rehab therapies are really beneficial in that sense for education and kind of developing a program. I keep clicking that. I don't know if you can hear that annoying little chirp. Okay, so a little bit of an introduction to clinical bike fitting. So why is bike fitting so important? A proper bike fit and body positioning can prevent overuse injuries and allows for improved comfort and better riding performance. Now, being comfortable on the bike is one of the things that makes it so fun. So if you are uncomfortable, then you're probably not going to like riding the bike. So that's one reason for the bike fit there. It allows you to use your muscles in the most efficient way rather than exhausting certain muscles and underusing others. Like I said, you kind of have to know those groups of muscles and how they're working for you to really understand if some are being overused versus some are being underused. And if you are constantly, for instance, with me, it's probably a good idea that I switch to clip pedals because I am overusing my quadricep muscles as opposed to using my quadriceps and my hamstrings and my hip flexors more. That's just one example. And then an improper fit can lead to discomfort while riding, decreased performance, and overuse injuries. So kind of the complete opposite. Who should get fitted? Anyone that cycles, realistically. And even just to learn, even if you're a bike share, someone that uses the bike share, it's nice to kind of know how high a seat should be, or kind of what right versus wrong feels like. So clinical bike fitting combines physiotherapy expertise with bike fit adjustments to meet the specific needs, goals, and abilities of each individual client. And I'll go through this a little bit more, but if you've never been to physiotherapy, physio is a very client-centered profession. And so we really focus on the needs and the goals of each client. And that's where I think the combination of bike fitting and physiotherapy really kind of elevates the whole bike fit experience as well. So how is bike fitting done? This is very general, just an introduction, but there is no single standardized way to fit a bike. And this is because there's so many bicycle makes and brands and different ways of cycling. There are theories and things like that and different techniques of how to do that for bike fitting, which are really great. And for instance, you can do it either statically, which is not moving, or you can do it dynamically, where they kind of hook you up and they do video and cool stuff like that. But basically, the reason why there isn't necessarily a standard way, the other reason is that there are so many anatomical differences in individuals. So our bodies are made differently. We have different mobility restrictions. We have present and past medical history that might impact it. And then there's also age differences. And all these things impact how someone might ride a bike. So we can't just put like one single measure on someone and just say, there you go. And so adjustments are typically made to the saddle, the handlebars, and the pedals based on measurements of the client on the bike. That's typically how it's done. In terms of position changes, so improper positioning and bike fitting on any bike can lead to chronic/overuse injuries. For example, both of these photos of myself are on the same bike fit. However, the position is different. So nothing has changed about my seat, about my pedals, anything like that, but I have changed the way that I'm riding. And so that's another important thing, that if you get someone to actually look at how you're riding, they're going to pinpoint certain things, and there might even not need to be any sort of adjustment. However, if there are needs for adjustment, they'll also be able to pinpoint that as well. So I'll kind of explain just a couple ways that individuals the types of things that you can do to measure. So a plumb line is dropped from the front of the kneecap and should intersect with the crank arm, which is below the clip pedal or the flat pedal. But adjustments are typically made to the seat height if the knee sits too far forward or backward. Now this can change as well if someone is, for instance, riding high on their handlebars, or if they're a little bit more lean forward, or if they're out of the saddle, then this doesn't really impact it. So there's different considerations to make there, but typically they get them in this position where both pedals are equal, and then you drop that plumb line down and you see if there need to be any adjustments made there. And then in general, there's also the angle measurements. Like I said, there's anatomical differences. There's also mobility differences. And so there's always a range of measurements here, which you can work within. And so that's where having someone look at the way that you're riding and really analyze your history or your anatomical differences is important, because there's a degree of movement that you can have within each of these angles. And so what we can do is actually measure with this device right here, the goniometer, measure kind of what you're at throughout your ride. And make any differences if there's pain or discomfort or anything like that. So a session of clinical bike fitting would look like this, where you kind of start off with a physio assessment. You're establishing fitness and cycling goals. Then you're discussing primary complaints and health and injury history. Then you move forward and you do a physical assessment of strength, flexibility, and function. You look at the diagnosis of pain potentially and injury if it's applicable. Then you're also going to learn strength and flexibility exercises that are specific to your goals. So if you want to go faster, what do you need to start recruiting? If you want to climb hills, what should you start thinking about? More upper body, more core, things like that. So really honing in on those. Then looking at how you ride on a trainer. Looking at how you stand on it or how you are statically. Look at how you move, making observations there. Then after that, you make changes to the components based on not only the observation of the ride, but the information that was gathered from the interview and the physio assessment. Then after that, you look at the pedal, the seat, the handlebar positions, and make sure that they're good for that specific goal as well. Then the really important thing is getting feedback from the rider. So getting them back onto the trainer and having the rider let you know exactly how that fit feels, because feedback is super important. It may look great, but it may not be comfortable based on those individual differences. Then after that, you have a follow-up. You're looking, either it's for physio because of pain or injury, or just to adjust the fit, because sometimes it takes around 100 kilometers to realize whether or not the fit works for you. Like I said, it's overuse type of injuries that typically reveal that something might be wrong with the bike fit. So it does take a little bit of time. Ooh, I'm going slow. Okay. So here's just an introduction to improving efficiency and preventing injury. Like I said, it involves a number of things. So I made this little diagram here, very creative, but basically you need to have a balance of strength, flexibility, and cardio fitness if you want to optimize your performance. And this is just what I've gathered from a lot of the literature. It's not only about the legs, as I've said before, it is about strength, flexibility, and cardio of your whole body. So warming up with about 5 to 15 minutes of cardio fitness training, like jogging, biking, elliptical, rowing, jumping jacks, etc. I tried to pick things that you could maybe do at home or outside because of the current situation. But those are really good things just to kind of start off. You can even just do like a light, low resistance ride as well. Then stretching. So stretching for about 10 to 15 minutes. You want to make sure that you're working both primary muscles, so the lower body ones, and the secondary muscles, so the core, back, and the upper body. You want to hold stretches for at least 30 seconds, then repeat on the other side. So I've got some good ones here. Quadriceps is just, I've got some very simple stretches here. So hitting the quadriceps, the hamstrings, the calves, and the glutes and the piriformis are really important to do. I do them before and after. I would suggest doing the same for it to get the most benefit, but at least doing it before you ride is important. And it'll help with recovery as well. Then looking at secondary muscles, I've got some examples here. Now there's so many more that you can do, but you've got the neck and shoulder, the mid and upper back, lower back, a classic cat-cow, and then you've also got the wrists, which are important as well, particularly if you're using straight bars, just because you are in this position a lot. So just working on that mobility with those wrists. And then some really great neck and shoulder exercises. As you know, working from home and riding your bike can be double trouble. I don't think I've ever used that term. But yeah, so some really good stretches here, but I would encourage you to look some, if you're looking at certain programs, I would encourage you to make sure that there are like also these secondary stretches in there as well. Now, strength exercises, I've chosen 3 that are really efficient. So basically they target a number of muscles that I think are important. So we've got the deadlift, and why? It's because it requires a full body movement and improves overall strength. Now, you don't need to be using a bar or anything for this. You can use either light weights, you can use no weight, you can use a band, anything like that. And this helps the back muscles as well as those primary muscles needed for the pedal stroke, which is why I like it so much. We've got the banded monster walk, which I think is really important. And this is because the hip abductors play a key role in stabilizing the pedal motion, especially if you begin to fatigue. So muscles that are prone to cramping, like the piriformis, can limit performance. So training them will actually help to prolong the time it takes to reach fatigue and reduce that cramping. And so this banded monster walk is a really great one just to kind of incorporate into your routine. It can be unbanded as well, and then the band can also move. This is on the calves here. It can move up to kind of mid-thigh. It can also go down to the feet as well, just for different challenges. The last one I have here, it's an efficient exercise to work on the shoulders and arms, as well as helps with stability for the core, back, and neck, which is, like I said, really good for mountain bikers or those that are that want to do like kind of uphill or rough terrain. So it's the Around the World weighted. Now, I myself don't have a plate, so this is kind of embarrassing, but I use, I have a cat, and so sometimes I use her thing of kitty litter. But you can get creative, like laundry detergent, something like that. Will really help. I thought
you were going to say you use your cat for this.
Oh, I don't think she'd like that very much. But I could. She's not heavy though. She's on her fitness journey. She's doing well. Okay, anyway, that is the end. And here is me on a bicycle. So let's begin some questions.
Wow.
And if you don't feel comfortable asking questions now or have other questions, you can always email me or message me on Instagram or something. Thanks.
You really love those bucket hats growing up. You should definitely.
I did. You know what? I don't think it was my choice, but like it's quite the statement.
I think you should look to bring these back. Actually,
I think we should get foundation ones.
Hey, don't give me any ideas for more gear. I don't need more.
Yeah.
You know, that's an easy fix for me. We've got a couple of questions. Your sister remembers the outfit. I'm wondering if she had the same one. Got a couple questions from Andre. When you see somebody riding a bike pump from side to side, is it already more speed, or is that less energy, or is it more energy?
See, that could mean a couple things too. If you're It also could mean that your seat is a little bit too high, depending on, you're thinking out of the saddle, Andre?
I would think he's thinking out of the saddle.
Yeah.
On the side.
So it depends. What I've heard is that it uses more energy. And so if you're kind of keeping things a little bit more contained, you don't have to go from side to side and use those core muscles to bring you back to the other side. I've also heard that it's more difficult to like keep your stability. I think it's more about personal preference and kind of what you figure out there. With what in terms of speed. Now, I personally find that I prefer to get out of the saddle if I want to go up a hill faster. Some people like to gear down and stay in the saddle. So I think it depends.
He also asked a question, it's just a little hit, might be hidden for you. He's seen spring type seats online.
Oh yeah.
Wondering your opinion of those or if you've seen those in the past.
I have seen them. I don't know if I necessarily have an opinion. I would have to look into that. And who asked that? Do you know?
That was Andre as well.
Andre. All these hard questions. No, I'm not sure about that one. Does anyone else have an opinion on those?
There's some talk about midges on the chat. I don't see a lot of cyclists personally. I see a lot of runners, but I tell them they are a good source of protein. If you.
Oh yeah, I had a lot of those this weekend actually.
Trying to sift through the jokes and the actual questions. Here's a question about somebody who has unilateral, so one-sided back pain when riding for a train or going uphill. Is there any specific exercises they might want to look at?
Yeah, so one-sided things you want to start, well, you also want to kind of like, I don't want to give you anything very, very specific because I'm not exactly sure what might be happening, but in terms of if one side is feeling like it's being used more than the other, like more back tension, then it might be beneficial to do one-sided activities like a side plank or something like that on the other side to help even it out, and then focus on stretching the side that you feel like you're using more. Now, it would be beneficial to get someone to see exactly where those strength imbalances are lying. It could even be stemming from the legs and how you're riding in that sense. So really kind of pinpointing exactly what the cause of that imbalance would be. But for the most part, you can try that unilateral, the other side, strengthening the other side a little bit more so that it pulls a little bit more weight, as well as incorporating a little bit more core exercise would be beneficial too.
There's a question from Ashley, and I actually missed this little tidbit here, but in your notes, in your slides, you suggested 10 to 15 minutes of stretching, which she asked, that seems pretty long.
Yeah.
How long, what would be a minimum ride required to be required for a 10 to 15 minute stretching?
So my suggestion for that, and the reason why 10 to 15 minutes is suggested, in my opinion, would be because there's a lot of components. Like I said, it's a full body exercise. Now, whether or not you're picking certain exercises or stretches to do, 30 seconds times like, what would that, five stretches. If they're efficient stretches and they work more than one body part or more than one muscle group, then you can really bring it down to about 5 minutes. But the most important thing is that you want to work on the 30 second is kind of where most of the research says that holding a stretch for 30 seconds is a good way to kind of lengthen that muscle, have it relax and then also lengthen. So that's kind of the key takeaway from that. If you were looking to decrease the time of the stretching, you could find more efficient stretches. Does that make sense?
I think that's good. Brittany was asking about any advice for avoiding median nerve numbness and tingling during those long rides.
Yeah, so that I would strongly encourage you doing wrist exercises, as well as shoulder exercises, like opening up opening up the chest before you ride, as well as in some of your strength complement exercises, working on those back muscles as well. And so some that I think that you should incorporate right away would be stretches like this and like this to really work on that wrist mobility, as well as loosen up these muscles right here. Because what could be happening, depending on what type of ride you're doing, it could be that you're putting a lot of force on those handlebars or gripping really hard. And it also could even contribute. I don't know if you're wearing a backpack or something, but the backpack is also a big issue for the median nerve and symptoms as well.
And actually, that's a great question, because Junior just asked, or said he's getting pain between his shoulder blades.
Okay.
Is there any kind of quick tips that you have for that?
Yeah, so oftentimes pain in the shoulder blades, and it sounds like it's, needing to push myself back. Pain, those are two different things. Okay, pain in between the shoulder blades. Yeah, so the things that you would want to kind of strengthen in that sense would likely be those back muscles and those ones surrounding the shoulder blade. And that is likely because they're fatiguing, or the nerve might be getting impinged or something like that. Like there's a ton of different structures back there. So it would be hard to pinpoint right away what would be happening, but my most immediate thought is strengthening those upper back muscles, because you do spend so much time seated forward. It's all about finding those strength balances to help your performance and to help that muscle efficiency as well.
A little bit of a nutrition question, and I know we will be a little careful with education when it comes to nutrition, but Aubrey is asking about any tips on electrolytes for longer rides. Maybe you have something that you've picked up or tidbits you've picked up along the way.
Yeah, within the scope of physiotherapy, we can't necessarily dive too deep into that, but definitely, like, having something along your ride, I think, is always beneficial. I know there's like little gummies that you can take, or drink electrolytes or something like that. Whether or not it actually helps or improves in performance, I know that if I'm on a longer ride, I do need a little bit of that boost. But that would definitely be something to talk to either a nutritionist about, or some sort of coach in that sense.
Yeah, naturopaths are always a good.
Right.
Naturopaths and dietitians are always good to ask about that, because they're probably the most up to date with any research when it comes to sport nutrition, and long rides definitely require maybe a little bit more expertise on that.
Right. And my sister said honey stinger. Those are the ones I love.